18 permits don't mean a thing if the land underneath them was never cleared to build on. That's what the county inspector told Cindy Whitmore at 8:43 on a Thursday morning, and I'll never forget the way her smile disappeared. I was standing 30 feet away with cold coffee in one hand and 6 weeks of photographs in the other, while a white county pickup idled beside garage number 18. The engine ticked softly in the August heat. Fresh asphalt gave off that oily, baked smell that sticks to the back of your throat. Behind the inspector stood 18 brand-new garages in 2 perfect rows, beige siding, dark brown doors, matching gutters, even little brass numbers screwed beside every entrance. Cindy had spent more than $1 million turning the strip of land behind my house into what she called Cedar Glen's premium resident garage expansion. Now a county inspector was pressing a bright red notice against the final garage door. Cindy marched across the pavement so fast her heels clicked like a stopwatch. "You can't shut this project down," she snapped, waving a thick blue binder against her chest. Every structure was permitted. The inspector didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He peeled the backing from another notice and smoothed it onto garage number 17. "The permits aren't your problem, Mrs. Whitmore." That stopped her. Even from where I stood, I could see her fingers tighten around that binder. 6 weeks earlier, she'd held the same binder in my backyard and told me I didn't understand property law. She had building permits, engineering drawings, contractor signatures, county stamps. She had 18 homeowners who'd already put money down for garage spaces. She had an HOA board that voted exactly the way she wanted. And for a while, I'll admit it, she had me wondering whether I was the one who'd misunderstood the boundary behind my own house. But Cindy was missing something. One document. One quiet piece of paper nobody bothered to look for until concrete had been poured, electrical lines had been buried, doors had been hung, and 18 garages were standing where they should never have been standing. The inspector reached garage number 16. Rip. Press. Smooth. Another red notice. Cindy finally looked past him and saw me. Her face changed. Not anger. Not yet. Recognition. The kind that arrives when 6 weeks of little details suddenly connect in your head. I took one slow sip of coffee. It had gone bitter and cold, but I barely noticed. Somewhere behind garage number 12, an air conditioner hummed. A sprinkler clicked across somebody's lawn. Otherwise, Cedar Glen had gone strangely quiet. Cindy opened her binder and started flipping pages. Fast at first, then slower. Site plan. Permit. Drainage approval. Inspection report. Another permit. Her polished thumbnail kept catching the corners. "What exactly are you saying is missing?" she asked. The inspector stopped beside garage number 15 and looked directly at her. "I'm saying somebody should have checked who had to sign off on this land before you built anything permanent on it." Cindy looked at me again. I didn't smile. I didn't have to. Because 6 weeks earlier, before the concrete trucks, before the county notices, before garage number 18 ever had a door, there had been an old iron property marker behind my fence. And Cindy Whitmore had made the mistake of moving it. 6 weeks before those red notices appeared, the land behind my house was so quiet I could hear squirrels moving through the maple leaves before sunrise. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 46 years old, married to my wife Laura for 19 years, and I had spent most of my adult life working residential construction around Central Ohio. I was not an attorney, surveyor, or county official. I was the guy contractors called when a drainage slope was wrong, when a foundation crew needed a site graded properly, or when somebody discovered that a set of plans looked better on paper than they did in actual dirt. 11 years earlier, Laura and I had bought our 3-bedroom house in Cedar Glen because it backed up to open ground instead of another row of rooftops. Our backyard ended at a weathered cedar fence about 60 feet from the kitchen window. Beyond it sat a narrow strip of grass, several old maples, and an undeveloped field that separated us from the western side of the subdivision. Nothing fancy. That was exactly why I liked it. Every morning I drank coffee on the back patio while the neighborhood slowly woke up. Sprinklers hissed. Garage doors rattled open. Somewhere beyond the trees, traffic hummed along the county road. The strange thing was that I had always paid more attention to that rear property line than most homeowners probably would. The man who sold us the house, Harold Bennett, had been nearly 80 when we closed. During the final walkthrough, he took me behind the fence and pointed at an old iron survey pin buried beside the largest maple. Rust covered the top, and weeds nearly hid it. Never let anybody move that rear marker, Harold told me. I laughed because I thought he was giving me the kind of advice older homeowners give younger ones about gutters and property taxes. He did not laugh back. Boundaries only look unimportant until somebody wants what is on the other side. I remembered that sentence. I also kept the old survey he handed me. It went into a gray plastic document box with our deed, closing papers, insurance records, and 11 years of receipts. Then life happened, and the box disappeared onto a shelf in my basement. I probably did not open it for 8 years. The land behind us stayed empty. The iron pin stayed beside the maple, and I had no reason to think about either one. Then Cynthia Whitmore became president of the Cedar Glen Homeowners Association. Everybody called her Cindy. She was 53, always perfectly organized, always carrying a leather folder, and always talking about property values as if they were a medical emergency. Her first year brought new entrance signs. Her second brought decorative streetlights and stricter landscaping rules. Then, one Tuesday evening, Laura slid the monthly association newsletter across our kitchen counter while I was eating dinner. A glossy rendering covered half the page. 2 neat rows of private garages stood behind houses that looked suspiciously like ours. I counted them twice. 18. Laura tapped the picture. Daniel, is that the field behind us? I stared at the drawing, then through the kitchen window toward the dark line of maples. Something about the site plan bothered me immediately. The garages looked too close. The access lane looked too wide, and the boundary line printed along the bottom of the rendering was not where I remembered it being. The next morning, I walked behind the fence with my coffee. Dew soaked my boots as I reached the old maple. I pushed aside the weeds and found the rusted iron marker exactly where Harold had shown me 11 years earlier. 23 feet beyond it, somebody had driven a new wooden construction stake into the ground. Bright orange ribbon snapped in the breeze. Printed across the stake were 3 words that made my coffee suddenly taste bitter. Proposed garage line. That orange ribbon bothered me all day. I had spent enough years around construction sites to know stakes did not appear by accident. Somebody had measured something, approved something, and paid somebody else to put that piece of wood exactly where it stood. 2 nights later, I found out who. The Cedar Glen clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner when Laura and I walked into the monthly homeowners association meeting. About 40 residents filled the folding chairs. At the front stood Cindy Whitmore beside a projection screen, wearing a navy blazer and holding the same leather folder she carried everywhere. Cindy had been president for almost 3 years, and she ran meetings with the polished confidence of someone who had learned that most people stopped asking questions if you buried them under enough paperwork. This project solves one of Cedar Glen's longest-standing problems, she announced. The screen changed to a glossy rendering of 18 garages arranged around a paved access lane. Cindy explained that the association had secured financing, selected a licensed contractor, completed engineering review, and received preliminary county approvals. Residents without enough garage space could reserve individual units. Property values would rise. Street parking would decrease. Everybody benefited. People nodded. A few actually applauded. Then Cindy displayed the site plan. I leaned forward. There it was again. A clean black boundary line running behind our property, farther toward my fence than the line shown on the survey I remembered. I raised my hand. Where did that boundary come from? Cindy looked at me as if I had asked why water was wet. The project survey. Who commissioned it? The association. And did the surveyor locate the existing rear monument behind my lot? The room got quieter. Cindy's smile stayed perfectly fixed. Daniel, this project is entirely within association common property. That was not my question. Laura touched my wrist under the table. Not to stop me, just reminding me to stay calm. Cindy clicked to the next slide. We have professional documentation. I think we should rely on licensed experts rather than individual homeowners' recollections. That earned a few uncomfortable chuckles. I could feel heat rising under my collar, but construction had taught me something useful. When somebody wants you angry, make them explain themselves instead. Then I would like a copy of the survey and the recorded plat supporting it. Cindy paused for half a second. Barely noticeable. I noticed. Submit a records request. After the meeting, I watched residents crowd around the garage reservation sheets. Cindy stood among them answering questions like a developer at a grand opening. I waited until the room cleared, then walked toward the projection screen. The site plan was still glowing there. 18 rectangles, 1 access lane, drainage arrows, setback measurements. I took out my phone and photographed it. Cindy appeared beside me, perfume cutting through the stale coffee smell. "You are making this more complicated than it needs to be," she said. "I work around property lines for a living, Cindy. Then you should understand that surveys replace guesswork. Good surveys do." Her smile tightened. "The board has architects, engineers, contractors, financing, and county approvals behind this project. You have an old fence and a memory." I looked at the boundary line one more time. "I also have an iron marker." For the first time that evening, Cindy stopped smiling. It lasted maybe 1 second. Then she closed her leather folder. "That marker is irrelevant." The next morning, I submitted my records request. 3 days later, Cedar Glen sent me 87 pages of permits, drawings, meeting minutes, contractor agreements, and engineering documents. The stack landed on my kitchen table with a heavy slap. Cindy had not been bluffing. On paper, everything looked legitimate. That should have reassured me. Instead, I walked outside toward the maple tree. More orange stakes had appeared overnight. This time, one stood less than 4 feet from the old iron pin. At 6:12 the following Monday morning, the backup alarm of a bulldozer dragged me out of bed before my alarm clock could. Beep, beep, beep. Then came the low growl of a diesel engine and the sharp crack of branches breaking somewhere behind the house. Laura was already standing at the bedroom window. "Daniel, you need to see this." I pulled on jeans and work boots and went through the kitchen without bothering with breakfast. The second I opened the back door, the smell hit me. Diesel exhaust. Fresh dirt. Cut wood. Beyond our cedar fence, a yellow excavator was scraping away the grass I had looked at for 11 quiet years. 2 pickup trucks sat beside stacks of lumber, orange safety cones marked an access lane, and a crew in reflective vests was removing brush along the tree line. I walked through the side gate and headed straight for the maple. My boots sank into damp soil where heavy tires had churned the ground into dark grooves. The orange construction stakes were still there. The maple was still there. The iron marker was not. I stopped. I knew exactly where it had been. I had photographed it 3 days earlier with the orange stake less than 4 feet away. Now there was only a shallow hole filled with loose brown dirt. I crouched and pushed my fingers through it. "Nothing. Can I help you?" A man in a hard hat approached, carrying rolled plans. He introduced himself as Wade Collins, the project superintendent. I told him I owned the house behind the fence and asked who authorized work near my boundary. Wade was polite, but his answer came quickly. "Cedar Glen Homeowners Association. We have the approved site plan. Did your survey crew remove a property monument?" His expression changed just enough for me to notice. "You would need to ask the surveyor. I am asking whether your crew touched it." Before he could answer, a white sport utility vehicle rolled down the temporary gravel lane. Cindy stepped out holding a stainless steel travel mug in her leather folder. She looked completely at home among the machinery. "Daniel," she said, "I was wondering how long this would take." I pointed at the empty hole. "Where is the iron pin?" She glanced down as if I had shown her a weed. That marker was obsolete. The diesel engine behind us dropped into an idle. Suddenly, every word sounded clearer. Property monuments do not become obsolete because they interfere with a project. Cindy took a slow drink from her mug. "The current survey controls the construction. Your old marker was inconsistent with the recorded common area." I pulled out my phone and opened the photograph. Date, time, location, rusted pin beside the maple, orange stake 4 feet away. Then nobody should have had a reason to remove it. Her jaw tightened. "You are interfering with authorized association work." "No, I am documenting it." I photographed the hole, the machinery, the stakes, the contractor trucks, and the temporary access lane. Cindy watched every picture. By 8 o'clock, the first section of my rear fence had been removed to give equipment clearance. By noon, 3 maples farther down the strip were gone and the ground had been graded nearly flat. Fine dust coated our patio furniture. Laura wiped a finger across the table and held it up without saying anything. At 3:17 that afternoon, an email arrived from the association. It warned me not to obstruct approved construction and claimed the project was located entirely on association property. Attached were permit numbers, the new survey, and Cindy's favorite phrase, community improvement. I printed everything. That evening, when the machinery finally stopped, the silence felt unnatural. I walked back to the maple with a flashlight. Something metallic caught the beam 20 yards away beside a pile of uprooted brush. I reached down and pulled a short, rusted piece of iron from the dirt. The top was stained orange from decades underground. I did not move it again. I photographed it exactly where it lay. Then I looked across the freshly graded strip toward the 18 foundation outlines painted on the ground. Cindy thought she had removed an inconvenience. What she had actually done was give me my first piece of evidence. The first thing I learned was that evidence and authority are not the same thing. I had photographs of the iron marker before construction, photographs of the hole after it disappeared, and photographs showing what looked like that same rusted pin lying beside the brush pile. I thought that would be enough to stop everything until somebody checked the boundary. It was not. At 8:30 the next morning, I drove to the county administration building with a folder under my arm and construction dust still on my boots. The planning office smelled like printer toner and old carpet. A clerk pulled up the garage project on her computer and turned the monitors slightly toward me. Building permits. Approved. Site review. Approved. Stormwater plan. Approved. Electrical applications. Filed. I gave her my address and explained the missing property marker. She studied the screen, then shook her head. The submitted survey shows the structures inside association property. I have an older survey showing something different. Then you may have a boundary dispute. 2 words that sounded harmless until she explained what they meant. The county was not going to halt an approved project because one homeowner challenged a survey. I needed documentation establishing that the current plan was wrong. By the time I reached the parking lot, concrete trucks were probably already turning into Cedar Glen. I called an attorney that afternoon. He reviewed what I had and told me litigation could take months. Cindy needed days. On Wednesday, concrete forms appeared. On Thursday, reinforcing steel went down. Friday morning, the first mixer arrived before 7. The rotating drum made a low mechanical rumble that carried straight through our kitchen windows. Laura stood beside me watching gray concrete pour into the foundation trenches. They are moving fast. She was right. That was the strategy. Every completed step made stopping the project harder, more expensive, and less popular with our neighbors. Cindy understood momentum. By the end of the week, residents who had reserved garages were already asking why I was trying to ruin something they had paid for. One man stopped me near the mailbox and said his family needed the storage space. Another reminded me that the project had been approved by a board vote. I did not blame them. They had been shown the same polished drawings I had. Cindy made sure they saw me as the obstacle, not the unanswered question underneath the concrete. Then the association sent me a formal notice demanding that I stop entering the construction area. It arrived in a thick envelope with my name printed beneath the Cedar Glen logo. I could smell fresh ink when I opened it. The letter accused me of disrupting authorized improvements and warned that further interference could result in association penalties. I laid it beside the 87 pages Cindy had already sent me. Permits, engineering plans, contractor agreements, survey, meeting minutes. Everything looked clean. Too clean. I spent Saturday morning at our kitchen table comparing the new survey with the faded copy from our closing documents. Laura brought coffee and left me alone with a ruler, a yellow legal pad, and 2 property descriptions separated by decades. The measurements did not line up the way I expected, but I could not yet prove why. By Monday, wooden framing rose above the graded field. By Wednesday, I could count the garage openings from my patio. 6, 9, 12. The smell of cut lumber replaced the smell of dirt. Nail guns cracked through the afternoon in steady bursts. Cindy drove past the construction site twice a day in her white sport utility vehicle. On Friday, she stopped near my driveway while I collected the mail. "I hope we can finally move past this," she said. I looked beyond her at the growing walls. For the first time since this started, I wondered whether she might actually be right. That night, I went downstairs, pulled the gray document box from the shelf, and emptied 11 years of paperwork onto the basement floor. Near the bottom was Harold Bennett's original survey. Folded behind it was a recorded subdivision plat I had completely forgotten existed. In the lower corner, beside the rear boundary, someone had drawn a narrow shaded strip and typed a reference number so small I needed my reading glasses to see it. I wrote the number down. Monday morning, I was waiting outside the county records office when the doors opened. The county records office opened at 8, and by 8:12 I was sitting beneath fluorescent lights with Harold Bennett's faded subdivision plats spread across a laminate counter. The place smelled like paper, dust, and coffee that had been sitting on a burner too long. Behind the counter, a records clerk named Rachel Bennett adjusted her glasses and studied the reference number I had copied from the lower corner of the plat. No relation to Harold, she told me before I could ask. She typed the number into her computer. Nothing. She tried again without the dash. Still nothing. Then she disappeared into a back room and returned carrying a thick folder with yellowed pages clipped inside. This subdivision was recorded in 1987, she said. Her finger followed the shaded strip behind my property. That is not a normal lot line. My pulse picked up. What is it? Rachel did not answer immediately. She pulled another record, then another, comparing legal descriptions and recording numbers. I could hear the soft scrape of paper beneath her fingertips. Finally, she pointed to a notation tied to the rear strip. Decades earlier, when Cedar Glen was first developed, that land had been reserved under a private access and drainage arrangement connected to several original parcels. The association could maintain portions of it, but permanent construction required an additional recorded authorization from the affected property interest holder. Who holds that interest now? I asked. Rachel turned back to the computer. A minute passed. Then another. Printer keys clicked somewhere behind us. Your deed appears to carry the interest forward from the Bennett parcel. I stared at her. So they needed my approval? I cannot give you a legal conclusion, she said carefully. But I can tell you what document should be referenced here. She tapped a blank line in the county index. And I cannot find it. That sentence landed harder than any argument Cindy and I had exchanged. I asked Rachel to check the garage permit file. She brought up the electronic record. Site plan. Building approval. Drainage review. Contractor license. Survey. Page after page appeared. Then she stopped at the ownership authorization section. There was a reference to association-controlled common land, but nothing releasing the older property interest attached to my parcel. Rachel frowned. This needs a land use review. She called someone upstairs. 20 minutes later, Tom Alvarez from County Building Compliance joined us. Tom had gray hair, work boots, and the calm voice of a man who spent his days telling expensive projects inconvenient things. He studied Harold's plat, my deed, the newer survey, and the photographs on my phone. He spent the longest time looking at the image of the rusted iron marker beside the maple, then the image showing it displaced near the brush pile. Do you have the original files for these photographs? He asked. Every one. Keep them. He printed several pages from the county system and compared recording numbers with a pen. Then he asked the question I had been waiting to hear. Did you ever sign anything authorizing permanent structures on that rear strip? No. Did anyone ask you to? No. Tom leaned back. His chair gave a small squeak. Do not contact the association about this yet. I must have looked confused because he raised one hand. We need to verify the chain of title, the survey basis, and exactly what was represented during permitting. If something is missing, I want to know why before anybody starts rewriting the story. Outside, the morning sun reflected off parked cars hard enough to make me squint. My phone buzzed before I reached my truck. Cindy had sent a community update. Framing was nearly complete. Garage doors would be installed that week. I looked at the photographs attached to her message, then back at the county building behind me. For 3 weeks, I had been trying to make Cindy stop building. Now the county had told me something completely different. Stay quiet. So I did. Staying quiet was harder than arguing. Every morning after that, I stepped onto my patio with coffee and watched Cindy's project get closer to completion while pretending I had stopped caring. The framing disappeared beneath beige siding. Brown garage doors arrived on a flatbed truck and were installed one after another. Electricians dug narrow trenches for conduit. Gutters went up. Asphalt crews laid the access lane. And for 2 days the smell of hot tar drifted through our open windows until Laura finally turned on the air conditioning and shut the house tight. I documented everything. Not because Tom Alvarez told me exactly what the county had found. He had not. He only told me to preserve dates, photographs, association notices, and anything showing how the project progressed. So I created a folder on my computer and labeled every photograph by date and time. Foundation pour. Framing. Electrical trench. Siding. Drainage inlet. Asphalt. Garage doors. I saved Cindy's community updates too. She sent them constantly now. Her messages celebrated construction milestones and reminded residents that garage assignments would begin soon. One email described the project as a permanent association improvement built entirely on association-controlled property. I printed that one twice. Cindy interpreted my silence exactly the way I expected. She thought I had surrendered. The first time she realized I was no longer filing complaints, she became almost friendly. I was checking my mailbox one afternoon when her white sport utility vehicle slowed beside me. The passenger window lowered. "I am glad you finally learned how property law works," she said. There was satisfaction in her voice, but I kept mine flat. "Yeah, I did." She smiled and drove away. I watched the vehicle turn toward the clubhouse and wrote down the date when I got home. 2 days later, another association letter arrived. This one complained about survey flags I had placed near my rear fence after hiring an independent surveyor. The flags, according to Cindy, interfered with community landscaping. I read the letter twice, then placed it beside the others. My surveyor, Mark Ellison, had spent nearly 4 hours locating recorded monuments around my lot. He did not give me a dramatic speech when he finished. He simply stood beside the maple, looked toward the garage foundations, and said, "I would not remove any of your photographs." His preliminary measurements placed the historic rear line exactly where Harold's old survey suggested it should be. More importantly, Mark documented the location where the original iron marker had been found after it was displaced. I sent his field notes to Tom. Tom replied with 4 words. "Received. Review still active." That was all. Meanwhile, Cindy kept building. Garage number 1 received its brass number on Monday. Number 6 by Tuesday. Number 12 on Wednesday afternoon. By Friday, all 18 doors were numbered. From my patio, they looked finished enough to use. Fresh asphalt stretched between the rows, black and smooth under the August sun. The project that had started as orange stakes now blocked most of the open view behind our house. Laura stood beside me that evening while sprinklers clicked across neighboring lawns. "Does it bother you that they finished?" she asked. "They are not finished. They look finished." I watched Cindy walk between the garages with Wade Collins, checking something on a clipboard. There is a difference. Sunday evening, Cedar Glen sent every homeowner an invitation to the garage assignment event scheduled for Thursday morning. Cindy called it the final milestone. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:46. Tom Alvarez was on the other end. His voice was calm. "Daniel, we completed the title review." I set my coffee down, and there was a short pause. "Keep Thursday morning open. We are coming to Cedar Glen." Thursday morning arrived bright, hot, and almost windless. By 8:15, folding tables had been set up beside the new garages with bottled water, registration forms, and 18 small envelopes containing access information for the residents who had reserved spaces. Cindy stood near garage number 1 in a cream jacket, greeting homeowners like she was opening a new subdivision. Wade Collins walked beside her carrying a clipboard. I stayed on my patio with Laura and watched from behind the section of fence the construction crew had left standing. At 8:38, the first county vehicle turned onto the temporary access lane. Then a second. White pickups with county seals on the doors rolled slowly across the fresh asphalt and stopped near garage number 18. Conversations faded. Tom Alvarez stepped out carrying a document case. 2 other county employees joined him, one from building compliance and another from land use. Cindy crossed the pavement before Tom had finished closing his truck door. "Good morning," she said. "Are you here for the final inspection?" Tom looked toward the garages. "Not exactly." He opened his case and removed a stack of red notices. The sound of paper separating was surprisingly loud in the silence. He walked to garage number 18 and pressed the first notice onto the brown door. Cindy stared at it. "What is that?" "Administrative stop and occupancy hold pending land use review." "That cannot be right. These buildings are permitted." Tom moved to garage number 17. "The building permits are not the issue." By garage number 15, Cindy had opened her leather folder. I recognized the binder inside it immediately. She began flipping through pages. "We have site approval, engineering approval, drainage approval, building permits, and contractor documentation. I have reviewed them." "Then what exactly are you claiming is missing?" Tom stopped. He pulled one certified record from his case and placed it on the hood of the county truck. The original subdivision plat created a recorded property interest across this rear strip. That interest carried forward with the Mercer parcel. Permanent structures required a recorded release or written authorization from the affected interest holder before this land could be treated as unrestricted association property. Cindy's pages stopped turning. Tom continued, "Show me the recorded release." Cindy looked down. She flipped backward through the binder, then forward again. The homeowners around the tables had stopped talking completely. "The association owns the common area," she said. "Maintenance authority is not the same as unrestricted construction authority," Tom replied. "Show me the release." Cindy looked toward Wade. Wade shook his head once. She looked at another board member. Nothing. Then she looked at me. I walked across the asphalt carrying the certified copy Rachel had helped me obtain. Heat shimmered above the black pavement. The smell of new asphalt mixed with fresh lumber and somebody's coffee. "Daniel," Cindy said, quieter now, "did you file something with the county?" "I found something the county already had." Tom pointed to the signature requirement. "Mr. Mercer, did you authorize these permanent structures?" "No." "Did you sign a release?" "No." Cindy closed the binder. "This is a technicality." Tom's expression did not change. "It is a recorded property restriction." Then he produced the photographs I had submitted. The iron marker beside the maple. The empty hole. The marker displaced near the brush pile. "There is also a survey discrepancy we are reviewing," he said. Cindy's face went still. Tom turned toward the remaining garages and continued posting notices. 14, 13, 12. Each red sheet changed the mood of the crowd. By the time he reached garage number 1, nobody was holding an access envelope anymore. Cindy had 18 completed garages, 18 permits, and 18 red notices. What she did not have was my signature. The 18 red notices stayed on those garage doors for 73 days. What happened during those 73 days was quieter than construction, but far more expensive. The county completed its review and confirmed that the recorded property interest attached to my parcel had never been released. The association had authority to maintain the rear strip, but not to place permanent structures across it without the required authorization. My independent survey also matched the older recorded plat closely enough that the county ordered a formal boundary review. The displaced iron marker became part of that record. Cindy called it a misunderstanding. The county called it an unresolved land use violation. The residents who had paid for garage spaces wanted refunds. The contractor wanted payment. The association attorney wanted documents. Suddenly, Cindy's polished community improvement had become a stack of invoices nobody wanted to own. Cedar Glen held an emergency meeting on a Tuesday night in September. Laura and I arrived early and sat near the back. The clubhouse smelled exactly as it had the first night Cindy presented the project: burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. Only the mood had changed. Nobody applauded when Cindy walked to the front. Greg Halpern, the association treasurer, spent nearly 40 minutes explaining refund obligations, legal expenses, restoration estimates, and the possibility of a special assessment if the board could not recover enough money through insurance and contractor claims. Then homeowners started asking questions. Why had construction begun before every land document was verified? Why had the association treated maintenance rights like ownership rights? Why had my objections been dismissed? Cindy kept opening her binder, but the binder no longer impressed anyone. Before the meeting ended, the board voted to remove her as president pending the completion of its internal review. She gathered her papers without looking toward me. I felt no urge to celebrate. I only remembered her standing beside that maple telling me the iron marker was irrelevant. By November, a settlement had been reached. The garages could not remain where they stood under the existing approvals, and redesigning the project around the recorded restriction would have cost more than removing it. So the same kind of equipment that had arrived behind my house in August came back in the cold. This time, it came to restore the land. The garage doors disappeared first, then the siding, then the framing. The asphalt access lane was removed, drainage was corrected, and topsoil was spread across the disturbed strip. The association paid for restoration of my fence and landscaping, along with my documented surveying and legal costs. Nobody became rich. Nobody needed to. I wanted my boundary respected. By early spring, grass had started coming through the new soil. The association planted replacement maples along the rear buffer. One cool Saturday morning, Mark Ellison returned with his survey equipment. Laura brought 2 cups of coffee outside, while I followed him behind the fence. He checked his measurements twice, then knelt beside the largest maple. From his truck, he brought a new permanent survey monument. He positioned it, checked the coordinates again, and drove it into the ground. The final strike made a clean metallic clang that carried across the empty strip. For a second, I thought about the machinery that had once filled that same space. Diesel engines, concrete trucks, nail guns, 18 garage doors, all that noise, all that money, all that confidence. And in the end, the thing that mattered was a quiet line in an old county record and a signature nobody had bothered to obtain. Laura handed me my coffee. Beyond the fence, there were no garages anymore, only young maple trees moving in the morning breeze. Harold Bennett had been right all those years ago. Boundaries only look unimportant until somebody wants what is on the other side. Cindy had a board full of votes, a licensed contractor, county permits, and a binder thick enough to stop a door. I had one thing she could never manufacture after the concrete was poured: the right to say no. Justice did not arrive shouting. It arrived one document at a time, patient enough to wait until the truth caught up with everything built on top of it.